Alright guys, so you've watched the Ted Atlantic slave trade video, you've gone over the questions, now it's time for me to give you the answers, alright? So I'm going to run my way through this since you've already watched it, and I know that most of our classes have already gone through this, or if you haven't, welcome, and here are the answers. Alright, so number one, what institution stands out as being one of the most horrific examples of slavery from history? All right, it's basically the title of this worksheet and the video you just watched. It would be the Atlantic slave trade. Known for being one of the most horrible examples of slavery from history. Is it the only one? No. But it is one of the most horrible, especially that we have a record of. Number two, how long did it last? The video tells us that it lasts from about 1400s to 1800s. So about 400 years. Not exactly, but about. That's a rounded number. So about the 1400s to the 1800s. All right, let's scoot this up. Which continents were involved? The video lists 3, but there's actually 4. So let's start with the ones that the video lists. And we're going to start with North America, and South America. North America and South America. Quick question. Did the Europeans actually call them North and South America? Yeah, no, they really didn't. So how did they refer to North and South America? What did they call North and South America? If you said just the Americas, you would be correct. They basically combined the two of these. There was no North and South, just the Americas. The other 2 continents that were involved. One that the video lists, Africa. The other one that it does not list, Europe. Europe was heavily involved. All right. In fact, number 4, who were the 2 countries responsible for starting the Atlantic slave trade, were 2 countries that were in Europe. Because remember, Europe's a continent. It is not a country. So number 4, we're looking for countries. And which 2 were responsible for starting? This means they started it. They weren't the only ones that participated. It's kind of like when somebody starts a fight. They're not the only ones participating, but they're the ones who started it. All right? Who were the 2 countries that started the Atlantic slave trade? Well, one is Spain. The other one, Portugal. All right? Very important to know because those 2 countries would heavily influence the culture of Latin America and South America moving forward. And that's very important for this entire unit. That's basically our AKS for this unit. So keep these 2 countries in mind and remember them vividly. All right, number 5. Name 3 main crops the colonies wanted to harvest and why they wanted to harvest them using slave labor. All right, well, one was sugarcane. We can thank sugarcane for sugar. Next, cotton. Cotton. Not much to say about cotton. And then finally, tobacco. Tobacco became very, 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 very popular. All right. In fact, all 3 of these became super popular. So The Europeans planted a lot of it, and then they found that they didn't want to do the work. Why didn't they want to do the work to harvest these crops? Because they were super labor intensive, meaning they were hard to harvest. Back-breaking, grueling, 12 to 14-hour days in the hot, humid sun with no shade, very little rest, very few breaks, if any, and a lot of pressure to pick or harvest as much as you possibly could. It was super, super, super difficult, and they didn't want to do it. They wanted somebody else to do it for them. Now, just as a little side note, since I know this is going to be coming up in your vocabulary and is on the quiz on Friday, sugarcane, cotton, tobacco, all of these would become known as cash crops. All right, and this is because farmers would plant them, farmers would grow them, farmers would have their slaves harvest them, and then they would sell them for lots of money. And I do mean lots, all right? They were basically worth just pure money. Hey, I can't afford to buy this pair of breeches, so let me trade you this sugar cane for the breeches. All right, sounds good. Here's the breeches. I'll take the sugar cane. All right, let's go to the next page. What caused the death of many natives in the Americas? Many of you already knew this and knew it was disease. Some of you guys knew the exact disease that would cause the death of many natives. Some of you didn't. But so that we're all on the same page, that disease that would really ravage the natives was smallpox. Very, very, very deadly. Europeans and Africans had become somewhat used to it. They had built up a tolerance or an immunity so that, yeah, they might get smallpox. They might even get really sick. A few might die from it. But it wasn't as threatening to Europeans and Africans as it was to the natives who had never experienced any kind of disease like it. All right. Number 7, how did the kings who sold slaves to the Europeans view the people they sold? All right. Well, they mainly saw them 3 different ways. One was as criminals. So instead of going to jail after committing a crime, you could be sold into slavery. Another way that they were saw or seen was prisoners of war. After a war or a battle, the winning tribe or winning group might take the opposing army or tribe as prisoners, as slaves, both strengthening themselves, meaning the winner, and weakening the one who lost. So it was technically, in the eyes of war, a win for the opponent. And especially if they sold them into slavery, they both got rid of some of their enemies and they made a profit by selling them. All right, and then finally C, debtors, or people who owed money. So if you owed money to somebody, they could technically sell you to make up the money that they had lost and that you could not pay back. This is 100% illegal now. both slavery, but also the idea of debtors. If you owe money, they cannot arrest you. They cannot bring you to jail. They can harass you for the money. They can try to get you to pay up, but they cannot bring you to jail. That part is illegal. All right, list 3 things the enslaved Africans would face after being imprisoned, either in Africa on the ships or once in the Americas. All right, I'm actually going to give you 6 so that, so that you have plenty to choose from. I'm only asking for 3, but again, I'm going to give you, 3. All right, so 1, many were sold away from their families. Families were torn apart this way. There was no guarantee that even if your entire family was sold into slavery, that you would stay together. You could be torn apart. 2, physical punishment or abuse. Many slaves were abused. Many, if not the majority. 3, they were forced to entertain the crew members on the ships and eventually their masters, the people who would own them. In the video they mentioned men being forced to dance around the ship, and they use the excuse, well, you need exercise. This is a way for you to get out your energy. There's really nothing else for you to do. Right, but mostly it was a form of entertainment for the crew members. 4, many slaves would have some kind of body part cut off, or they would be, sorry, I didn't mean to just put branded as proof that they were a slave or of who their owner was. You couldn't hide a brand or a missing body part. And many slave owners would have a unique or specially made brand that they would use to identify their slaves. So if a slave ran away and was caught, even in another country, another state, if that slave owner was prosperous enough and their brand was known, that slave could be returned because law enforcement could recognize the brand and return them. 5, women and children were abused. Finally, and I know I kind of ran out of a line, I wanted to make sure that this one was visible to you guys. Many starved or thrown overboard. They're in the middle of the Atlantic on a boat. if you're thrown overboard, there's not much chance of you surviving, being able to make it to an island, back to Africa, to some land in the Americas, to Europe, anywhere. Even if you could swim that far, there are many dangerous animals in the Atlantic, and you might just starve or just simply not have the energy. Swimming takes a lot out of you. Many people were just thrown overboard and left to die. Many of you might have noticed that my tone completely changed answering this question, and that is because this answer in particular deserves more respect and more sensitivity than almost any other question and answer on this worksheet, because these were humans and other people who suffered these things. These were things that many had to endure, and I refuse to make light of it. So I adopt a very formal, very solemn tone, because this is real. This is some real stuff. Let's look at number 9. What did many Africans think white people were? Because all they knew was that these white men showed up, and some of their tribes, some of their family, friends, people they saw every day just disappeared and never came back, and here come the white men again looking for more. What was happening to them? They believed that they were being eaten, that the white men were eating their fellow tribes people. And a human who eats another human is known as a cannibal. Cannibals. And that's CANNIBALS. All right, number 10. What was the lasting impact made on Africa by the slave trade? Explain and give some detail. All right, I kind of changed the way that I answered this question in most of my classes. So if you want to cross this out, you're welcome to. Here's where some of the impacts made on Africa. 1, their population shrank. They had less people. In Africa, there were more women than men, especially in the beginning, because a lot of the times the Europeans wanted strong, healthy men to be slaves, to do the hard work. They didn't worry about the women, and women, they can't do the hard labor that men can. That was a lot of sarcasm there. I totally don't mean that. That's what the Europeans said. Women can do hard labor. Europeans didn't think so, though. So they took more men than women, and there were more women left in Africa. All right, another one. The people of Africa had more weapons that they hadn't had access to before, like guns. All right? And one thing that happens, or really two things that happens, when people in general have more access to deadly weapons, is it leads to more war and more violence. More war and more violence. More war and more violence leads to less government, stability, meaning that you never knew if next year you would be living under the same government. You might be living in a democracy now, you could be living in an autocracy next month, even next week, tomorrow. You never knew if your government was going to last. And then finally, changing culture. And when I say culture, I mean like language, religion, tradition, the way you cook things, the way that you sing your songs, the way that you dance, the way you go about your daily life. That's all culture. All right, make sure that you have this worksheet completely filled out. If I had to tell you that any one of these questions was like the most important question on this entire worksheet, that one right there. Because while we're not focusing on Africa this unit, we are focusing on South America. And all of these either also happened in South America or the opposite happened. See if you can guess which ones happened in South America and which ones the opposite happened. All right, we're going to be going over that. All right, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for doing your work like I asked you to. Make sure to turn this in to me by either sending me by email a copy of it or turning it in by the end of class on Wednesday. All right, I will see you guys then, and I will see y'all on Wednesday.